The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and pine. I'd spent the afternoon baking Patrick's favorite ginger cookies, the ones with molasses that Robert used to say tasted like Christmas itself. 3 dozen of them sat cooling on the counter, wrapped in red cellophane and tied with green ribbon. Perfect, just like every year. Beside the cookies sat 2 other packages. The first was bulky, wrapped in brown paper because the contents were too awkward for regular wrapping paper. A handmade quilt I'd been working on for 7 months. Navy blue and cream, a pattern called Irish chain that my own mother had taught me when I was 15. Every stitch done by hand during the long evenings after Robert died, when the silence in this house felt like it might swallow me whole. The second package was smaller, a leather-bound cookbook I'd found at an estate sale. The Art of French Cooking, first edition, 1961. Nora had mentioned once, just once, maybe 2 Christmases ago, that she wanted to learn to make coq au vin. I'd remembered. I always remembered. It was 6:47 p.m. when my phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. I wiped flour from my hands and picked it up, expecting maybe a Merry Christmas Eve text from my brother Daniel in Boston, or a reminder from Margaret next door about tomorrow's church service. Instead, I saw Patrick's name. My heart did that little leap it always did when I heard from my son. Even at 64, even after raising him alone for half his life, that flutter of maternal joy never quite went away. I opened the message. Mom, don't come tomorrow. Nora thinks it's best if we have Christmas just the 2 of us this year. She needs space from family pressure. Hope you understand. I read it twice, then 3 times. The words didn't change. My hand started shaking. Just slightly, just enough that I had to set the phone down on the counter before I dropped it. I stared at the cookies, at the quilt, at the cookbook wrapped in silver paper with a bow I'd curled with scissors until it looked like a flower. Space from family pressure. What family pressure? I saw them maybe once a month now, if that. I called every Sunday, or I used to until Nora started answering Patrick's phone with that clipped voice that made every word sound like an inconvenience. He's in the shower. He's working. He'll call you back. He never called back. Last Christmas, Nora had hugged me at the door, called me Mom Irene, and thanked me for the cashmere scarf I'd given her, the expensive one I'd saved for 3 months to afford. She'd smiled with her whole face, warm and genuine. And I'd thought, finally she sees me as family. What changed in 12 months? I picked up my phone and called Patrick. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. Hey, it's Patrick. Leave a message. Sweetheart, it's Mom. I just got your text and I'm a little confused. Can you call me back, please? I hung up. Waited. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 20. I called again. Voicemail. On the 3rd call, I didn't leave a message. I just listened to his voice on the recording. My son, my baby, the boy I'd raised alone after Robert's heart attack, took him at 53. Patrick had been 17 then, angry and grieving and so lost. I'd held him together with my bare hands, worked double shifts at the hospital where I'd been a medical transcriptionist for 30 years, helped him apply to colleges, moved him into his dorm, danced with him at his graduation, and now he was telling me not to come to Christmas, because Nora needs space. I was staring at my phone, trying to decide whether to call a 4th time, when I heard a knock at my back door. Through the window, I saw Margaret Flynn's concerned face, her gray hair in curlers under a plastic rain bonnet, even though it wasn't raining. I opened the door. Honey, she said, taking one look at my face. What happened? And I started crying. The loan officer's name was Mr. Peterson, and he had the kind of face that made you trust him. Soft around the edges, with reading glasses perched on his nose and a wedding ring worn thin from 40 years of marriage. Mrs. Walsh, he said, sliding the papers across his desk. I want to make sure you understand what you're signing here. This is an $85,000 home equity loan against your current property. That's a significant sum. I looked down at the papers. My hands, weathered from 6 decades of living, scarred from the kitchen accident in '98, wedding ring still on my left hand, though Robert had been gone 2 years, were steady as I reached for the pen. I understand, I said. And you're using this for the down payment on a house for your son? Yes. Will his name be on the deed? I hesitated. Patrick had asked me this same question last week. We'd been sitting in my living room, Nora beside him on the couch, holding his hand, both of them looking at me with such hope that my heart had ached. Mom, are you sure about this? Patrick had asked. That's your retirement money. Your father wanted you to have security, I'd told him. This is what he would have wanted, what we both want. Nora had cried, actually cried, tears streaming down her pretty face. Mom, Irene, she'd said. She'd started calling me that after the engagement. I promise we'll pay you back. Every penny. Don't worry about that, I'd said, waving away her tears. We're family now. Now, in Mr. Peterson's office, I answered his question. No, the deed will be in my name. Just temporarily until Patrick builds up his credit. He's only 29. Give him a few years to establish himself, then we'll transfer it. Mr. Peterson nodded, made a note. And you've discussed this arrangement with him? He understands it's still legally your property? Of course, I said. I signed the papers. Every single one. My name in blue ink. Irene Marie Walsh. 2 weeks later, I handed Patrick the keys to a beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman on Maple Street. Built in 1925 with original hardwood floors and a brick fireplace and a backyard big enough for the children I hoped he'd give me someday. He'd hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Nora had kissed my cheek and whispered, "You're the mother I never had." I'd driven home that night and sat in Robert's chair. I still called it that, even though he'd been gone 2 years, and felt such profound satisfaction. My son had a home, a real home. The kind of stability Robert and I had worked our whole lives to build. I'd done good. I'd done what mothers do. Looking back, I can pinpoint exactly when things started to change. 3 months after the wedding. It was a Sunday afternoon. I'd called Patrick's cell like I always did, just to check in, hear his voice, ask about his week. The phone rang twice, then Nora answered. Hello? Oh, hi Nora, sweetheart. Is Patrick around? He's in the shower. I'll tell him you called. Okay, just have him... Click. She'd hung up before I could finish. I'd stared at my phone, confused. Maybe she was in a hurry. Maybe she hadn't meant to be abrupt. I waited for Patrick to call back. He didn't. It happened again the next Sunday, and the next. By the 4th week, I started calling in the mornings instead, hoping to catch Patrick before work. Nora answered every time. He already left. He's running late. He's on a work call. Always an excuse. Always her voice instead of his. When I finally did reach Patrick, I'd called his work line at the engineering firm. He sounded distracted. Hey, Mom. Sorry, I've been meaning to call you back. Just been super busy with this new project. That's okay, honey. I just wanted to hear your voice. Maybe we could do dinner this week. I'll make your favorite pot roast? A pause. I heard Nora's voice in the background, too muffled to make out words. Actually, Mom, this week's not great. Rain check? Rain check became 2 weeks. 2 weeks became a month. Our Sunday dinners, a tradition since Patrick was 6 years old, stopped completely. 8 months after the wedding, I decided to visit unannounced. Just a quick stop with Patrick's favorite apple pie, the one with the lattice crust that Robert used to say looked too pretty to eat. I pulled into the driveway of the house on Maple Street. My house, though I'd stopped thinking of it that way. Through the front window, I could see them in the living room. Patrick was laughing at something, his head thrown back the way he used to laugh as a boy. Nora was tucked under his arm, and she was laughing too, her hand on his chest, both of them looking so perfectly happy that it made my heart squeeze with joy. See, I told myself, they're fine. You're worrying over nothing. I got out of my car with the pie balanced in my hands. The moment Nora saw me through the window, her expression changed. The smile vanished. She said something to Patrick, and I watched his face close off like a door slamming shut. By the time they opened the front door, there was no trace of the warmth I'd witnessed 30 seconds earlier. Mom? Patrick stood in the doorway, not quite blocking me, but not quite inviting me in. We weren't expecting you. I know. I'm sorry to just drop by. I made you an apple pie and thought, we have boundaries, Irene. Nora appeared beside Patrick, her voice pleasant but firm. We've talked about this. You can't just show up whenever you want. We've talked about this. We hadn't talked about anything. I didn't even know there were boundaries to discuss. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I just wanted to. Next time, call first, Nora said. She took the pie from my hands. Thanks for this. The door closed. I stood on the porch of the house I'd bought them, holding my empty pie plate, trying to understand what had just happened. Thanksgiving. I should have known it would be bad. The warning signs were all there. The reluctant invitation that came only after Father Brady asked Patrick at church if I'd be joining them. Nora's tight smile when I arrived. The way she'd rearranged her seating chart so I was at the far end of the table instead of next to Patrick, like always. But I went anyway, because he was my son, and you don't give up on your children. The comments started before we'd even finished the blessing. Patrick's still learning to pick up after himself, Nora said brightly, carrying in the turkey. His mother never taught him, I guess. Some people just don't think those life skills are important. Margaret, who'd driven me because my car was in the shop, raised her eyebrows at me across the table. During the meal, Irene, do you always eat so fast? In my family, we were taught to pace ourselves. When I complimented the stuffing, oh, this is my grandmother's recipe, real family tradition, not like those box mixes some people use. Every single comment delivered with a laugh, as if she was joking, but her eyes were cold. And Patrick? Patrick said nothing. He sat beside his wife, pushing sweet potatoes around his plate, and said absolutely nothing. I left before dessert, claiming I had a headache. In Margaret's car on the way home, I cried for the second time that year. That woman is poison, Margaret said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. And Patrick's letting her do this to you. She's his wife. Marriage comes first. That's how it should be. Marriage shouldn't mean abandoning your mother, Irene. But what could I say? What could I do? You can't force your adult child to see you. You can't demand love or respect or basic human decency. All you can do is wait and hope they remember who you are. Christmas Eve, back in my kitchen. Margaret had made me tea and sat with me for an hour while I cried, but eventually she had to go home to finish her own Christmas preparations. I was alone again, staring at the cookies and the quilt and the cookbook. The presents mocked me. I picked up my phone one more time, scrolled to Patrick's contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then I stopped. What was I doing? Begging my son to let me spend Christmas with him? Apologizing for what? For loving him? For wanting to see him? I set down the phone and walked to my filing cabinet in the study, Robert's old office, which I'd barely touched in 5 years. I pulled open the bottom drawer and found what I was looking for. A manila folder labeled Maple Street Property. Inside, the deed, the mortgage papers, the home equity loan documents, all bearing the same name, Irene Marie Walsh. Not Patrick Walsh, not Patrick and Nora Walsh, just me. I sat at Robert's desk and read every document. The house was mine, legally, completely, indisputably mine. Patrick and Nora had never paid a single dollar toward the mortgage, never contributed to property taxes, never signed a single paper. They were tenants in my house, and I had never, not once in 5 years, charged them rent. Something cold and clear settled in my chest, a realization that felt like waking up from a long, confusing dream. I opened my laptop and typed, tenant eviction laws, and my state name. 30 minutes later, I knew exactly what I had to do. I opened a new text message to Patrick. My fingers trembled as I typed. I deleted it, rewrote it, deleted it again. The final version was simple. Patrick, I've received your message about Christmas. Since you and Nora need space from family, I'm providing it. You have 30 days to vacate the property at 847 Maple Street. This is a formal eviction notice. The house is, and has always been, in my name alone. Mortgage papers and deed available upon request. Mom. I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I pressed send. 2:47 a.m. I didn't sleep. The pounding on my door started at 7:43 a.m. I'd been awake anyway, sitting in my kitchen with cold coffee, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. The banging was so loud that Margaret's dog started barking next door. I opened the door. Patrick stood on my porch, still in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair standing up like he'd just rolled out of bed. His face was red, a vein pulsing in his temple. He held his phone up like a weapon. "What the hell, Mom?" He pushed past me into my house without waiting for an invitation. "Patrick, please. You're evicting us?" His voice cracked. "You're kicking us out of our home?" "It's not your home," I said quietly. "It's my house." "You gave it to us. 5 years ago you gave us that house." "I put down the down payment. I've paid the mortgage. Every single month for 5 years. The deed is in my name, Patrick. Only my name." He stopped pacing, stared at me. "You said it was temporary, until we built up our credit. You said we'd transfer it eventually. And did you ever mention wanting to do that? Did you ever offer to start paying the mortgage? Did you ever act like you understood it was still my property?" His mouth opened, closed. "You call it our house," I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Nora calls it our house. You renovated it without asking me. You changed locks without giving me a key. You treated it like I didn't exist. Because we live there. We've lived there for 5 years. As my tenants. Living rent-free in a house I've been paying for." Patrick's face went white. "This is about one text message? About Christmas? You're being vindictive." And something inside me snapped. "This is about 18 months of unreturned phone calls. This is about Nora answering your phone every single time and you never calling me back. This is about Sunday dinners that stopped happening. About Thanksgiving where your wife insulted me all night and you said nothing." My voice was rising now, 5 years of hurt pouring out. "This is about me trying to visit my son and being told I need to respect boundaries at the house I bought you. This is about being pushed out of your life piece by piece while you stood there and let it happen." Patrick's anger deflated. He sank onto my couch, head in his hands. "Mom." "When did you stop thinking for yourself, Patrick?" I asked, more gently now. "When did Nora's opinion become the only one that matters? She's my wife. I'm supposed to support her. Support doesn't mean abandoning your mother. Marriage doesn't mean forgetting where you came from." He looked up at me, and for just a moment, I saw my son again. Not Nora's husband, not the stranger who'd sent me that text, but Patrick, my boy. "You're jealous," he said, but there was no heat in it. "You can't stand that I chose someone else." "I don't mind that you chose her," I interrupted. "I mind that choosing her meant erasing me." Silence. "Do you even know how much that house is worth?" I asked. "Do you know how much I've paid in mortgage and property taxes over 5 years?" He shook his head. I pulled out my folder, showed him the mortgage statements, the property tax bills, all bearing my name, my bank account numbers. 85,000 down payment, 1,500 a month mortgage, property taxes, insurance, maintenance. I watched him do the math in his head. "Over $100,000, Patrick. I've put over $100,000 into that house while living on a widow's pension and Robert's small life insurance policy." His face had gone gray. "And you? You and Nora have paid nothing. Not $1. And now you're telling me I can't come to Christmas in a house I own?" "We can't afford to move," he whispered. "Nora just quit her job to start her business. We don't have savings for first and last month's rent somewhere else. Mom, please. You have 30 days, I said. I suggest you use them wisely." Patrick stood up slowly, looked at me like I was a stranger. "Nora was right about you," he said quietly. "You're controlling. You can't let go." Each word was a knife. "Get out of my house, Patrick." He left. The door didn't slam, but I almost wished it had. The soft click of the latch was somehow worse. I sat down in the same spot where he'd been sitting, my whole body shaking. What had I done? What had I just done? But even as I asked myself the question, I knew the answer. I'd protected myself. For the first time in 18 months, I'd drawn a line and said, "No more." My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. "I saw Patrick leave. Are you okay? I'm coming over." I looked at the Christmas presents still sitting on my kitchen counter. The cookies, the quilt, the cookbook. All that love, wrapped up and ready to give, with nowhere to go. Patricia Sullivan's office smelled like leather and old books. She'd been Robert's attorney 20 years ago when we'd done our wills, and she'd handled his estate after he died. She was 60 now, with silver hair cut sharp as her reputation, and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. "Irene," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her mahogany desk. "I got your message. An eviction?" I slid the folder across to her. Everything I'd printed out at 2 a.m. The deed, the mortgage statements, the text message from Patrick, screenshot and dated. She read in silence, her expression neutral in that way lawyers have when they're taking in information without judgment. "This is legally airtight," she said finally. "The house is yours. They're tenants. You've given proper written notice. 30 days is actually generous. In this state, you only need to give 20 for month-to-month tenancy, and since they've never paid rent," she looked up at me. "But Irene, are you absolutely sure about this?" "I'm sure that I can't keep being treated like I don't matter. Family law is messy. Emotions run high. Courts hate landlord-tenant disputes between relatives." She took off her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose. "I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen mothers and sons who never speak again over less." My throat tightened. He's already not speaking to me. Fair point. She put her glasses back on. "Here's what I need you to understand. If you proceed with this, Nora, and possibly Patrick, we'll fight back. They might countersue. They might drag this through court. They might make you the villain on social media. People love a good, cruel landlord story, especially when it's family." "What would you do?" I asked. "If it was your son?" Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'd protect what's mine, but I'd also document everything. Every conversation, every text, every interaction. Because if this goes to court, you'll need proof that you're not just being vindictive." She opened a drawer and pulled out a legal pad. "First, we need a property inspection. I want documentation of the current condition of the house. Every room, every modification they've made. If they've done any work, I want to know if permits were pulled." "Permits?" "When you renovate a property, you need city permits for anything structural. Electrical, plumbing, walls. If they've done unpermitted work, that's a liability issue. For you, as the owner, I hadn't thought of that. Patrick had mentioned renovations over the years. We're opening up the kitchen. We're updating the master bath. But I'd assumed he meant cosmetic things. Paint, new fixtures. Second, Patricia continued, I want a complete record of all financial contributions to the property. Every mortgage payment, every property tax bill, every insurance payment. We need to prove you've paid for everything. I have all that. Good. Third, she paused. This is going to sound extreme, but I want you to consider hiring a private investigator. A private investigator? Patricia, she's my daughter-in-law, not a criminal. Maybe, maybe not. But here's what I've learned in 3 decades of family law. The people who fight the hardest usually have the most to hide. She leaned forward. You said Nora isolated your son, that she controls who he talks to, that she quit her job recently. She's starting a business, some kind of online thing. Do you know what kind of business? Have you seen a business plan? A website? I shook my head. Irene, I'm not trying to be paranoid, but when someone systematically isolates a spouse from their family, controls their communication, and makes major financial decisions like quitting a job, without apparent means to replace that income, she tapped her pen on the desk. Those are red flags. And if you're going to potentially lose your relationship with your son over this house, don't you want to know exactly who you're dealing with? I thought about Nora's cold eyes at Thanksgiving, the way she'd answered Patrick's phone for 18 months, the speed with which she'd gone from calling me Mom Irene to enforcing boundaries. Send me a referral, I said. Bill Morrison looked like someone's grandfather. White beard, flannel shirt, work boots worn soft with age. But his eyes were sharp as he walked through the house on Maple Street, and he carried a clipboard thick with inspection forms. "Mrs. Walsh, I need you to understand," he said as we stood in the driveway. "I'm going to document everything I see. Some of it might be upsetting." It was December 28th. Patrick and Nora were both at work. At least I assumed Patrick was at work. I had no idea where Nora spent her days now that she'd quit. I'd texted Patrick that I was conducting a property inspection, as was my legal right as owner. He hadn't responded. I used my spare key, the one Nora didn't know I still had. Inside, the house was different. The last time I'd been inside was, God, over a year ago? Thanksgiving before last? They'd changed so much. The living room where Patrick used to keep his bookshelf, the one Robert had built him for his 16th birthday, was gone. In its place was an open-concept space flowing into the kitchen. Modern, minimalist, nothing of Patrick's childhood remained. "This wall," Bill Saptu said, tapping on what used to be the division between living room and dining room. "This was load-bearing." "Was? Someone removed it. See these marks?" He pointed to the ceiling where I could see faint lines, evidence of something patched over. They took out a structural support wall and replaced it with this beam. He knocked on a horizontal beam running across the ceiling. It might hold, it might not, but it definitely wasn't permitted. "How do you know?" "I checked city records before I came. No permits filed for this address in 5 years. We moved to the kitchen. New cabinets, sleek white ones that must have cost a fortune. Granite countertops, a farmhouse sink. All this plumbing was moved," Bill noted, looking under the sink. "You can see where they rerouted the pipes. Should have had a licensed plumber. Should have had a permit. Did they tell you they were doing this?" "They said they were updating things." Bill made a note, his expression grim. The master bathroom was worse. What used to be a simple bathroom with white subway tiles and a basic tub was now a spa-like space with a walk-in shower, heated floors, and expensive-looking dark tiles on every surface. Bill tapped one of the tiles. It sounded hollow. "Water damage," he said. "Behind here. You hear that echo?" The tile wasn't installed properly. There's moisture behind the wall, which means mold, which means... He pulled out a moisture meter and held it against the wall. The reading made him wince. "Yeah, this is bad. This whole wall is going to have to be ripped out and redone." "How much are we talking about?" "For everything I've seen so far?" He consulted his notes. "Structural repairs for the load-bearing wall situation. You're going to need an engineer to assess that. Maybe $15,000. The bathroom, complete tear-out and redo, probably $20,000. The kitchen plumbing, if there are issues we can't see yet, another $5,000 to $10,000. Plus permit violation fines, which in this city run about $200 per violation. And I'm seeing at least 40 violations so far." The numbers kept coming. I stopped listening. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. They'd destroyed my house. The house I'd mortgaged my future to give them. The house that was supposed to be Patrick's security, his foundation. They'd gutted it, modified it, damaged it, all without asking, without even telling me the truth about what they were doing. "Mrs. Walsh?" Bill was looking at me with concern. "Are you all right? Do you need to sit down?" "I'm fine," I lied. "Just finish the inspection. I need to know everything." The final tally in Bill's report delivered 2 days later. $52,000 in necessary repairs. $8,000 in permit violation fines if I wanted to bring the house up to code and legally sell it. $60,000. I made $20,100 a month on my widow's pension and Robert's Social Security survivor benefits. I'd have to sell the house as is, at a massive loss, just to get out from under the liability. The call came at 7 p.m. on December 29th. I was making dinner, just soup I hadn't had much appetite, when my phone rang. Nora's name on the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings, my heart pounding. She'd never called me, not once in 5 years. It was always Patrick's phone, always her answering when I called him. I picked up. Irene, her voice was different, softer, almost tentative. I was hoping we could talk. Just us, woman to woman. About what? About everything. About the eviction, about Christmas, about how we got here. A pause. I know I haven't been fair to you. I know I've made mistakes. Could we meet for coffee? Tomorrow? Please? Every instinct I had screamed that this was a trap, but a smaller voice, the one that still hoped, still wanted to believe in redemption, whispered, "What if she means it?" "Where?" I asked. "That cafe on Main Street? The one with the good scones, 10 a.m.? I'll be there." The cafe was busy with post-Christmas shoppers, returning gifts and spending gift cards. Nora was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth. She'd dressed simply, jeans, a cream sweater, minimal makeup. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked young, vulnerable, not like the woman who'd sneered at me across the Thanksgiving table. "Thank you for coming," she said as I slid into the booth. "I didn't know if you would." I almost didn't. A waitress came by. Nora ordered chamomile tea. I ordered coffee, black. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Nora began once we were alone. "About my behavior. About how I've treated you." She looked down at her hands, twisted them together. "I owe you an apology, Irene. A real one." I said nothing, waited. "I never had a mother growing up. My mom left when I was 6. My dad raised me, but he worked all the time, and She took a shaky breath. "I think when I married Patrick, I didn't know how to share him. I saw you as competition instead of family. I felt like I had to compete for his attention, prove that I was enough, that he didn't need you anymore." The words sounded practiced, rehearsed, but there were tears in her eyes. "The text about Christmas, that was me. Patrick didn't want to send it. I pushed him. I was feeling insecure and petty, and I took it out on you, and I'm so sorry." She reached across the table like she was going to touch my hand, then thought better of it. "Please don't take our home," she whispered. "We'll do anything. We'll get permits for the renovations. We'll pay for all the repairs. We'll give you space if that's what you need. But please don't do this." I studied her face. The tears looked real. The emotion in her voice sounded genuine, but something was off. Something in her eyes, a calculation, a watching, like she was monitoring my reaction to adjust her performance. "Do you love my son, Nora?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. "Of course I do. I love Patrick more than anything." "Then why did you spend 18 months cutting him off from everyone who loves him?" "I wasn't—" "Don't lie to me. Not now." I kept my voice level. "You answered his phone every time I called. You made excuses so he wouldn't call me back. You created boundaries that just happened to exclude me. You isolated him." Her face flickered, just for a second. Annoyance, anger, then the mask of vulnerability slipped back into place. "I was protecting our marriage. You were a bit overbearing, Irene. Always calling, always wanting to visit. A young couple needs space. I called once a week. I visited maybe once a month. That's overbearing?" It felt like a lot. "To you, not to Patrick. Patrick loved our Sunday dinners. Patrick never missed a chance to talk to me until you started intercepting his calls." The tears were gone now. Her eyes had gone hard. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "You want me to grovel? To beg? Fine, I'm begging. Please don't evict us. We'll fix everything. We'll make it right." "How?" I leaned forward. "You quit your job. Patrick's salary can't cover rent somewhere else and repairs on my house. You have no money coming in. So how exactly will you make it right?" She opened her mouth, closed it. I stood up, pulled a $5 bill from my purse for my coffee. "The eviction stands, Nora. You have 26 days. You'll regret this." Her voice had turned to ice, all pretense of vulnerability gone. "Patrick will never forgive you. You'll spend the rest of your life alone, wondering why your son doesn't call, why you never meet your grandchildren." "Get help, Nora," I said quietly. Whatever you're dealing with, whatever made you this way, get help. I walked out. My hands didn't start shaking until I got to my car. Sharon Rivera didn't look like a private investigator. She looked like someone's cool aunt. Fitted blazer, short dark hair with gray at the temples, a direct gaze that missed nothing. "Patricia Sullivan speaks highly of you," she said when we met at her office on December 31st. New Year's Eve. While the rest of the world was getting ready to celebrate, I was hiring someone to dig into my daughter-in-law's past. "I need to know who Nora really is," I said. "What are you hoping to find?" "The truth, whatever that is." Sharon opened a laptop. "Give me everything you know about her. Full name, birth date, if you have it, where she's from, employment history, anything." I realized with a sinking feeling how little I actually knew. "Her maiden name is Morrison, Nora Morrison. She's 33, I think. She's from somewhere in Pennsylvania, maybe Pittsburgh. She worked at a marketing firm when she met Patrick, but I don't remember the name. She quit last month to start some kind of online business." "Do you know what kind of business?" "No." "Has she shown you a business plan, a website, business cards?" "No." Sharon made notes. "What about her family? You mentioned her mother left when she was young." "That's what she told me. Her father raised her. I've never met him. He didn't come to the wedding. She said he was sick. I sent a card, but never got a response." "And in 5 years of marriage, you've never met your son's father-in-law?" Put that way, it sounded absurd. Sharon looked up from her laptop. "Mrs. Walsh, I'm going to be frank with you. When someone's family is completely absent from their life, no contact, no visits, no communication, there's usually a reason. Sometimes it's abuse or trauma. Sometimes it's because the family member is estranged due to the person's own behavior." She paused. "I'll find out which one this is, but I need you to be prepared for what I might uncover." "I'm prepared." "Give me a week." She called me back in 5 days. "Mrs. Walsh, we need to meet. Today, if possible. This can't wait." The urgency in her voice made my stomach drop. An hour later, I was back in her office, watching her pull up files on her laptop. "Nora Morrison," Sharon began, "is not exactly who she's claimed to be." She turned the laptop toward me. "Her employment history first. She told you she worked in marketing?" "Yes." "She did. Sterling Marketing Group in Pittsburgh. She was there for 11 months before being terminated for expense report fraud. She was submitting false receipts, claiming reimbursement for personal expenses. The company discovered she'd embezzled approximately $3,200. I felt sick. They didn't prosecute, didn't want the scandal. Just fired her quietly. But there's an internal report." Sharon clicked to another file. "Then she got a job at Apex Realty, also in Pittsburgh. Lasted 8 months before being fired for forging client signatures on contracts. Again, no prosecution. The company wanted it to go away. Oh my God. There's a pattern here, Mrs. Walsh. Financial dishonesty, fraud. And those are just the times she got caught." Sharon pulled up another document. "Now let's talk about her current financial situation." A credit report appeared on screen. I didn't understand all of it, but the numbers in red were clear enough. She has $38,000 in credit card debt across 7 cards, $19,000 in personal loans, and 3 months ago she took out a payday loan for $3,000 at 29% interest. $60,000? I whispered. She owes $60,000. And climbing. The interest alone is probably $500 a month. On what income? Sharon looked at me. "You said she quit her job?" "To start a business. She told Patrick it was time to pursue her dreams." "Did Patrick know about the debt?" "I don't know." Sharon clicked to another file. "Here's where it gets really concerning. I accessed her internet search history, legally, through a service that tracks digital footprints. Look at what she's been searching over the past 6 months. The search terms made my blood run cold. Adverse possession laws. State name. How long to claim squatters' rights. Tenant-to-owner property transfer. Can tenants claim ownership after 5 years? Property rights of long-term tenants. She's been researching, Sharon said quietly. How to legally claim your house as hers. I couldn't breathe. Adverse possession, also known as squatter's rights, varies by state, but generally requires continuous occupation of a property for a certain number of years, usually 7 to 10. She's been living there 5. She's not quite there yet, but she's planning ahead. Sharon pulled up one more document. This is the search history from 2 weeks ago, right before Christmas. How to force elderly parent into nursing home legal guardianship of elderly parents. When can you declare someone mentally incompetent? The room spun. Mrs. Walsh, I think your daughter-in-law has been planning this for a while. The isolation of your son from you, the renovations that increase her sense of ownership, the financial desperation that makes your $350,000 house look like a solution to all her problems. Sharon's voice was gentle but firm. She's in massive debt. Your house is paid off. Well, mostly paid off by you. If she could get you out of the picture, she gets the house, I finished. Free and clear. Exactly. And with your son isolated from you, convinced you're the problem, he wouldn't question it. He'd sign whatever papers she put in front of him. I thought about Nora's text message at the cafe. You'll die alone. It hadn't been a prediction. It had been a threat. I called Daniel that night. My younger brother, living his neat, uncomplicated life in Boston with his husband Marcus and their 2 cats. Daniel, who'd never understood why I'd given Patrick so much, who'd warned me about spoiling him. Irene? His voice was thick with sleep. I'd forgotten it was nearly midnight. What's wrong? I told him everything. The eviction, the investigation, Nora's debt, her searches, her plans. When I finished, there was a long silence. Jesus Christ, Irene. I know. That's criminal. That's conspiracy to commit fraud or theft or I don't even know what to call it. I know. Another pause. Then, but you're going to lose Patrick over this. You know that, right? The words hit like a physical blow. Maybe I already have, I said. Is the house worth it? Is $350,000 worth never seeing your son again? Never meeting your grandchildren? Daniel, I'm serious. Because once you show Patrick this information, once you prove that his wife is a con artist who's been planning to steal your house, he's going to have to choose. And Irene? Men in love don't always make the smart choice. So I should just let her steal my house? Let her manipulate my son? I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to be prepared for the possibility that Patrick chooses her anyway. That he doesn't believe you, or he believes you but loves her more than he loves the truth, or... Daniel's voice cracked. I don't want you to be alone, Irene. You've been alone since Robert died. If you lose Patrick, too... I closed my eyes. I can't keep letting her abuse me just to keep my son in my life. I can't. I've tried that. For 18 months, I accepted every insult, every boundary, every rejection, hoping it would get better. It didn't. It got worse. I know. If I have to choose between my dignity and my son, I don't know if I can choose my son anymore. Then you need to talk to someone. Not me. I'm too close to this. Talk to Father Brady. Get some spiritual guidance. Because this isn't just about money or property. This is about your soul, Irene, and I don't want you to lose that. We talked for another hour. By the time we hung up, I hadn't changed my mind. But I had an appointment with Father Brady for the next morning. St. Catherine's was quiet on January 2nd, the week after Christmas, when the poinsettias were starting to wilt and the church felt empty without the holiday crowds. Father Tom Brady had known me for 20 years. He'd married Robert and me when we renewed our vows on our 20th anniversary. He'd done Robert's funeral. He'd counseled me through the grief. He knew me. We sat in his office, not the confessional. This wasn't about sin. It was about discernment. I laid out everything. He listened without interrupting, his weathered hands folded on his desk, his kind eyes never leaving my face. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Irene, he said finally. You're asking me if defending yourself is a sin. I'm asking if I'm being vindictive, if I'm letting hurt and anger drive me instead of love. Are you? I don't know. He leaned back in his chair. Let me ask you some questions. If Patrick came to his senses tomorrow and left Nora, would you drop the eviction? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said. Because the house is still mine, and I've learned I can't trust him with it. Not right now. Not until he's proven he can set boundaries with whoever he's with. Fair. Second question. If Patrick chooses Nora over you permanently, can you live with that? The question hurt, but I knew the answer. Yes, because I can't live with the alternative, letting myself be abused just to keep him close. Third question. What does justice look like here? And what does mercy look like? I had to think about that one longer. Justice is protecting what's mine, stopping Nora from stealing my house and my future, making sure she faces consequences for her manipulation. And mercy? Mercy is giving Patrick the information he needs to make an informed choice, not trying to control his decision, but giving him the truth. And then letting him go if that's what he chooses. Father Brady smiled. You've already answered your own question, Irene. Have I? You're not doing this out of revenge. You're doing it out of self-protection. Those are different things. Revenge seeks to harm. Protection seeks to prevent harm. He leaned forward. The Bible tells us to turn the other cheek, yes, but it also tells us to be wise as serpents, to protect the temple, to be good stewards of what we've been given. So you think I'm doing the right thing? I think you're doing the hard thing, the loving thing, because sometimes the most loving act is to stop enabling someone's destructive behavior, even when that someone is your child. He paused. You're teaching Patrick something you should have taught him years ago. What's that? That love doesn't mean being a doormat, that mothers are people too, that respect goes both ways. I left St. Catherine's feeling lighter than I had in days. The text I sent Patrick was simple. Come to dinner. Just you. Thursday at 6. We need to talk. This is important. He responded 3 hours later. Fine. I made pot roast. Robert's recipe, the one with red wine and carrots cooked until they melted. Patrick's favorite since he was 8 years old. He arrived at exactly 6 o'clock, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw. His shirt wrinkled like he'd pulled it from the bottom of a laundry basket. Hi, honey, I said. It's like everything was normal, like I hadn't evicted him, like the last week hadn't happened. Mom, he stepped inside cautiously. We ate in silence for the first 10 minutes. I watched him take bite after bite of pot roast, watched the tension in his shoulders gradually ease. Food had always been my way of loving him, the language we both understood when words failed. Finally, when his plate was nearly empty, I spoke. I hired a private investigator to look into Nora's background. His fork clattered onto his plate. You did what? I needed to know who she really is, who I'm dealing with. That's insane, Mom. That's a complete invasion of privacy. Read it. I slid the folder across the table. Sharon had printed everything. Employment records, credit reports, search histories. I'm not going to... Read it, Patrick, then we'll talk. He stared at the folder like it might bite him. Then slowly he opened it. I watched his face as he read. Watched the confusion turn to shock, turn to horror. This can't be right, he whispered, flipping through pages. Nora told me she left Sterling because of a hostile work environment. She said her boss was inappropriate. She was fired for embezzlement. No, she said. He kept reading. His hands started shaking. $60,000? She told me she had student loans. She said it was maybe $20,000 and she was paying it off slowly. It's $60,000 and it's growing. He got to the search history. His face went white. She was researching how to steal your house, I said quietly. No, she was probably just curious, or Patrick. I reached across the table, put my hand over his. Look at the dates. She's been researching this for 6 months, right around the time she started really isolating you from me. He pulled his hand away, stood up, started pacing my kitchen. There has to be an explanation. Nora wouldn't... She loves me. Does she? Or does she love what you can give her? A house, stability, a way out of her debt. You're poisoning me against her. I'm giving you information. What you do with it is up to you." He stopped pacing, turned to face me. Tears were streaming down his face. "I believed her about everything," he said. "Everything. The jobs, the debt, the boundaries with you. She told me you were overbearing, that you couldn't accept me being married, that I needed to choose between my wife and my mother, and I—" His voice broke. "I chose her. Every time I chose her. You were being manipulated by someone very skilled at it." "That's not an excuse." He slammed his hand on the counter. "I'm 35 years old. I should have known. I should have seen it." "Patrick, I sent you that text on Christmas Eve. My own mother. You could have spent Christmas alone crying, and I did that to you because Nora told me to." The pain in his voice broke my heart. "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters." "The eviction," he said quietly. "Does it still stand?" I'd known this question was coming. I'd prepared for it. "Yes." He nodded like he'd expected that answer. "I understand. It's your house. It always was. What are you going to do?" "I don't know." He sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. "I have to talk to her. I have to confront her with all this. But I already know what she's going to say." "What?" "That you're lying. That the reports are fake. That I have to choose between her and you." He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "And this time, Mom, I don't know if I can choose her." Patrick called me the next morning. "Nora wants to talk, all three of us. She says she deserves a chance to defend herself." "When?" "Today, 10 a.m., your place." "Patrick, I don't think—" "Please, Mom, let her try to explain. I need to hear what she says." So at 10 o'clock on January 4th, we all sat in my living room. Patrick on the armchair, Nora and I on opposite ends of the couch, the folder on the coffee table between us like a loaded gun. Patrick looked at Nora. "Is it true? The embezzlement? The debt?" Nora's face was calm, too calm. "Those reports are biased. I was scapegoated at both those companies. I was young, I made some mistakes with expense reports, but it wasn't embezzlement. You stole $3,000, I said. She didn't even look at me. The debt is real. But Patrick, I was going to tell you. I just needed more time to get it under control." $60,000, Nora. Patrick's voice was hollow. "Were you ever going to tell me?" "I was handling it." "By quitting your job?" "I needed to focus on building something sustainable, not working for someone else." "What business?" I asked. "You've been starting a business for a month. What is it?" Silence. "There is no business, is there?" Patrick said. More silence. "What about this?" I pulled out the search history printout. "Why were you researching how to claim ownership of my house?" Nora's mask cracked. Just for a second, I saw panic flash across her face. "I was curious. I was researching tenant rights because you were threatening to evict us. These searches are from 6 months ago, Nora. I didn't mention eviction until last week. I was worried. You were always talking about the house being yours, making little comments." "What comments?" Patrick asked. "Give me one example." Nora couldn't. "You were trying to steal my mother's house," Patrick said. The realization was dawning on his face, and it was terrible to watch. "All of it. The isolation, the renovations, the 5 years of making me think it was our house. You were planning to— What? Wait until Mom died? Force her into a nursing home? Declare her incompetent? That's not— You searched for all those things. How to declare someone mentally incompetent. I saw it." Nora stood up, her face flushed. "Fine. You want the truth? Here's the truth." And then it all came pouring out. "Yes, I'm in debt. Yes, I researched my options. I married you because you were stable, because your mother gave you a house, because I thought I was finally going to have security after years of struggling. Is that so wrong?" "You married me for my house?" Patrick's voice was barely above a whisper. "I married you because I loved you, and because you could give me the life I deserved." She was shouting now, all pretense gone. "And yes, I had to isolate you from her because she was always there, always calling, always expecting you to drop everything for Sunday dinners and holidays, and God, Patrick, you were 30 years old and still running to Mommy every time you had a problem. So you decided to fix me? Patrick stood up too. By cutting me off from my mother? By making me feel guilty every time I wanted to see her? I had to make you grow up. I had to make you see that you had a wife now, that your mother wasn't the most important person in your life anymore. And the house? I asked quietly. What was your plan for the house? Nora turned to me, and for the first time I saw pure hatred in her eyes. That house should be ours. We've lived there for 5 years. We've made it beautiful. We've put our hearts into it. If you just died or moved away like a normal old person, it would have been settled. But no, you had to keep hovering, keep interfering, keep reminding everyone that it was yours. The room went silent. Get out, Patrick said. Patrick, get out of my mother's house! Nora looked between us, realizing she'd lost. The mask was completely shattered now. She grabbed her purse. You'll regret this, she said to Patrick. Both of you. I'll file for divorce and take half of everything. I'll make your life hell. We have nothing, Patrick said. You've made sure of that. Now get out. She left, slamming the door so hard the pictures rattled on the walls. Patrick and I stood in the silence she left behind. Then my son collapsed onto my couch and started sobbing, deep, broken sobs that shook his whole body. I sat beside him and held his hand and didn't say anything. Sometimes there are no words. Sometimes all you can do is sit with someone in their pain and let them know they're not alone. The family court on January 16th smelled like old coffee and desperation. Patrick sat beside me in the gallery, his presence both comfort and reminder of everything at stake. Nora sat at the plaintiff's table with a lawyer she'd somehow found, probably on a payment plan she couldn't afford. Judge Sandra Morrison, no relation to Nora, thankfully, had a reputation for cutting through nonsense. She was in her 50s, with steel gray hair and reading glasses that she peered over like a weapon. Nora's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client has lived in the property at 847 Maple Street for 5 years. She has made substantial improvements to the home, invested her time and money, and believed in good faith that the property would eventually be transferred to her and her husband. This eviction is retaliatory and unnecessarily cruel. I watched Nora dab at her eyes with a tissue. The performance was beginning. Nora took the stand. Mrs. Walsh promised us the house, she said, her voice trembling. We thought we were building our future. We poured our savings into renovations, new kitchen, new bathroom, making it our home, and now she's just taking it all away because I sent one text message. Tell me about these renovations, Judge Morrison said. Do you have receipts? Nora hesitated. We paid most of the contractors in cash, to save money. So no receipts? We have some, not all. And did you pull permits for this work? I don't know. The contractors handled that. You don't know if permits were pulled for renovations on a house you claim to have invested in, Nora's lawyer interjected. Your Honor, my client trusted the professionals. Sit down, counsel. Judge Morrison made a note. Mrs. Walsh, the younger Mrs. Walsh, how much would you estimate you spent on these renovations? At least $50,000? I nearly choked. Patricia Sullivan touched my arm, warning me to stay silent. Judge Morrison looked at Patricia. Mrs. Sullivan, your response? Patricia stood, calm and professional. Your Honor, we have documentation. She approached the bench with a folder. First, the deed to 847 Maple Street, showing Irene Walsh as sole owner. Second, 5 years of mortgage statements, all paid by Irene Walsh from her personal bank account. Third, 5 years of property tax bills, again all paid by Irene Walsh. She presented another document. Fourth, a professional property inspection conducted on December 28th of last year. The inspector found multiple unpermitted renovations, including removal of a load-bearing wall, unpermitted plumbing work, and water damage from improper tile installation. Estimated repair cost, $52,000. The plaintiff didn't improve the property, Your Honor. She damaged it. Judge Morrison studied the documents. Ms. Morrison, you claim you spent $50,000 on improvements. Where did that money come from? Savings. Credit cards. And your current employment? I'm between jobs. I'm starting a business. What kind of business? Silence. Patricia spoke again. Your Honor, if I may, we have additional evidence. She pulled out her phone. Text messages between the plaintiff and Mr. Patrick Walsh, provided voluntarily by Mr. Walsh. Patrick had given them to Patricia 3 days ago. He'd sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through 2 years of messages with Nora, his face getting paler with each one. Patricia read from her phone. Text from Nora Morrison to Patrick Walsh, dated May 14th of last year. Your mom is old. How much longer can she realistically live? Then the house is ours, free and clear. Twist number 4, the smoking gun. The courtroom went silent. Nora's face drained of color. That was taken out of context. Another text, June 3rd. We need to establish adverse possession. I've been researching. 5 more years and we can claim it. Your Honor, those were private conversations. That prove intent, Patricia said. The plaintiff wasn't making good faith improvements to a home she believed would be hers. She was executing a plan to steal my client's property. Judge Morrison removed her glasses. I've heard enough. Ms. Morrison, your motion to stop the eviction is denied. Furthermore, you are liable for property damages. Mrs. Irene Walsh is entitled to pursue a separate civil suit for repair costs. She slammed her gavel. You have 10 days to vacate. Bailiff, we're done here. Nora stood up, screaming. This isn't over. You can't do this. That's my house. 2 bailiffs moved toward her. Patrick sank lower in his seat beside me, head in his hands. As we left the courtroom, I heard Nora shouting, Patrick, don't let her do this. I love you. He didn't turn around. The final days, Nora refused to pack. Day after day, Patrick drove by the house. His clothes were still there, his books, his life, and reported that nothing had changed. She was calling his bluff, waiting for him to cave. On day 8, the sheriff posted the final notice on the door. On day 9, Patrick went to collect his belongings while Nora was out. He came back to my house. He'd been staying in my guest room since the confrontation, with 3 boxes and a haunted expression. That's it? I asked. 3 boxes? Everything else was ours. Hers. I don't know anymore. He set them down in the hallway. The bookshelf Dad built me. She'd painted it white. My grandmother's quilt. She'd thrown it in the basement because it didn't match the aesthetic. My records, sold them to pay for new curtains. He looked at me. I don't know who I've been for the past 5 years, Mom. I don't recognize myself. Then this is your chance to remember, I said gently. On day 10, eviction day, the sheriff arrived at 9 a.m. I didn't go. Patricia advised against it, but Patrick did. He called me from his car afterward. She wouldn't leave, he said, his voice hollow. She stood in the doorway screaming that it was her house, that we'd lived there for 5 years, that she had rights. The sheriff had to, Mom, they had to physically escort her out. She was sobbing, clinging to the doorframe. Patrick, I know she's manipulative. I know she planned all this. But seeing her dragged out of that house, he took a shaky breath. I keep thinking about when we first moved in, how happy we were, how I thought I'd found my person. You found who she pretended to be, I said. That's not the same thing. After he hung up, I sat in my kitchen and cried. Not for Nora, for my son, who'd lost 5 years to a beautiful lie. 2 months later, I sold the house in March. The repairs were too expensive, $52,000 I didn't have. So I sold it as is to a developer for $280,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage and Patricia's legal fees, I netted $168,000. Not the $350,000 it could have been worth, but enough to secure my retirement. enough to prove that fighting back had been worth it. Patrick helped me pack up the last items from the house before the closing. Walking through those rooms one final time felt like a funeral. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said as we stood in the empty living room. "For what this house cost you. For what I cost you. You didn't cost me anything." I took his hand. "Protecting you cost me money. That's different." Was it worth it? I thought about the past 2 months. Patrick in therapy twice a week, working through what his counselor called complex manipulation trauma. Patrick calling me every Sunday, actually calling, his own voice on the line. Patrick starting to remember who he was before Nora. "Yes," I said. "It was worth it." Ah. 4 months later, Sunday dinners became our tradition again. Every week, 5 o'clock, Patrick would arrive at my door with wine or flowers or just his presence. We cooked together, Robert's old recipes, the ones I'd almost forgotten. We talked about real things, his therapy, his job, the apartment he'd rented downtown. Small and simple, he said, but his. One Sunday in May, he told me about Nora's bankruptcy filing. Her lawyer called. She's in bankruptcy court. All that debt, plus the legal fees from our divorce, plus, he shook his head. She moved back to her parents' house in Pennsylvania. How do you feel about that? Relieved, sad, angry, guilty? He looked at me. My therapist says I'm allowed to feel all of it at once. Your therapist is right. He helped me wash dishes, and for a moment we were just mother and son again. Like the years before Nora, before the house, before everything got so complicated. "I'm dating someone," he said suddenly. I nearly dropped the plate I was drying. "You are?" "It's new, very new, 3 months. Her name is Grace. She's a nurse at the hospital." He dried his hands, nervous. "I wanted to tell you before I brought her to dinner. If that's okay." "Of course it's okay. Patrick, you don't need my permission. I kind of do, though. After everything with Nora, I need to know you're okay with me dating again. That you trust me to choose better this time." I set down the dish and turned to face him. "Do you trust yourself?" "Getting there. Grace is different. She asks questions. She listens. She actually wants to know about my life, my past, my family." He smiled. "She asked if she could meet you. I told her I'd ask you first. I'd love to meet her." 8 months later, September, twist number 5, the new beginning. Grace came to Sunday dinner with wildflowers from the farmer's market and a nervous smile. She was 32, with warm brown eyes and laugh lines that suggested she smiled often. "Mrs. Walsh, thank you so much for having me," she said, shaking my hand. "Patrick's told me so much about you." "All good things, I hope." "The best things." She looked around my kitchen. "He said you taught him to cook, that every recipe in his apartment is one you gave him." We made dinner together, the 3 of us working around each other in my small kitchen. Grace asked me about the spices I used, about Robert's recipe for pot roast, about the stories behind the photos on my refrigerator. She wasn't competing. She was connecting. After dinner, Patrick and Grace did the dishes while I made coffee. Through the doorway, I watched them work together. Him washing, her drying, both of them laughing at something I couldn't hear. "What do you think?" Patrick asked later, after Grace had left. "I think she sees you. The real you. I'm terrified I'll mess this up too. You're not the same person you were with Nora. You've done the work." He hugged me, a real hug, tight and lasting. "Thank you, Mom." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For fighting for me even when I didn't know I needed saving. Christmas Eve again. 1 year after the text that changed everything. My kitchen smelled like cinnamon and pine, just like last year. But this time, I wasn't wrapping presents alone. Patrick and Grace were coming for dinner. Margaret and her sister Carol were joining us. Father Brady was stopping by for dessert. My house, my small, simple house that I'd lived in for 35 years, was full of life again. I'd used some of the money from selling the Maple Street house to finally take the trip to Ireland I'd been dreaming about. I'd spent 3 weeks there in October, visiting cousins I hadn't seen in 40 years, walking the cliffs of Moher, sitting in pubs listening to music that made my heart ache with homesickness for a place I'd left as a young woman. I'd come home different, lighter, more myself than I'd been in years. The doorbell rang. Patrick and Grace stamping snow off their boots, carrying pie and presents and laughter. "Merry Christmas, Mom," Patrick said, kissing my cheek. Grace handed me a wrapped package. "Patrick said you collect teacups. I found this at an antique shop. I hope you don't already have it." We gathered around my table, the same table where Patrick and I had sat a year ago, where I'd shown him the evidence of Nora's betrayal. But tonight, there was no grief, only gratitude. Patrick raised his glass. "To my mom, who taught me that love doesn't mean losing yourself, that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges, that protecting yourself is an act of courage." Everyone raised their glasses, and I realized I'd lost a house, but saved my son. Lost $182,000, but gained my dignity. Lost 5 years of peace, but learned what I was worth. The house on Maple Street had been wood and nails and dreams. Important, yes, but not as important as the man sitting across from me, laughing at something Grace said. Finally free. Not revenge. Rescue. That's what mothers do. We fight for our children, even when they don't know they need saving. Even when it costs us everything. Especially then, I looked around my table, at my son, whole again. At Grace, kind and real. At Margaret, who'd stood by me. At the life I'd rebuilt from the rubble. This was victory. Not Nora's downfall. Not the money, not even the vindication. But this, my son, home for Christmas. By choice, with love. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I said to Patrick. He smiled, that crooked smile that was all Robert, all mine, all his own. "Merry Christmas, Mom." And it was.